I feel like sometimes we know ourselves to be like, I'm more of a creative person, or I'm more of an analytical person, but sometimes we haven't put specific labels with that. And I love it when the light bulb goes on and we're having a face-to-face conversation, and you mentioned something that it's kind of like the pieces click. And that is just a very satisfying aspect of what I do. I love watching that happen.
Hi, I'm Micah Clark with American Family Association. Today we're going to talk about career testing. We did this recently with Debbie Bouse, our guest, to talk about why she homeschools and what she does for homeschool families and her personal experience, which included a lot of learning about career testing. We're going to talk more in depth today about career testing because it's so important for all kids, whether you're a homeschool parent or not. I think it's a great guide for your kids when they're going off to college or when they're looking for a job to know kind of how they're wired, what their interests are. So with us today again is Debbie Bouse. And Debbie, tell us about your company. I didn't mention this in the last interview, but this is actually your job now in terms of career testing. So tell us about that.
Correct. So I have a small business, Successful Transitions, and it was started in 2004, and I do interest testing for high school students through adults.
Okay.
So high school students contemplating what comes after high school, college students who are kind of saying, okay, I started out majoring in English, but now I don't know where I'm going and what I'm doing. People who have recently graduated, sometimes with degrees that didn't lead toward a profession, but then also people who are looking for career changes.
I remember when I went to college, my dad told me, I don't know if this is a true stat or not, I've looked for this stat, but I'll just say it this way. The majority of people 10 years after they graduate from college are doing something that was not in their field of education, their degree. Have you heard that?
I have heard that. I don't have an exact statistic, but most college students do change their majors 2 or 3 times. So my goal is to help your student find the right part of the auditorium to sit in. I might not get them in the right seat, but hopefully if we're looking at a change, it might be from finance to accounting versus from accounting to nursing over here. So hopefully starting your student in the right area will get them a bachelor's degree in 4 years.
Now, how much of pursuing a career, I guess it depends on the student, is what they're good at versus their passion? For example, my son did not like accounting, but his accounting teacher came to him and said, have you considered being an accounting major? He loves numbers.
Right.
But he didn't particularly enjoy accounting, but he was capable of doing that. And he did think, well, you know, it's a good job, they make decent money, maybe I should, but it wasn't really where his passion was. So that never showed up on a career test for him, other than the fact that he was good at math.
He was good at math.
So, and I've wondered that even in my own life, should I have pursued more of my passions or more of my abilities? It's kind of nice when they both go together. Is that, I don't even know the question I'm asking you. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, and that is a hard thing because I think it's very hard for a young person at 16 to look at the career options that are out there and say, when I'm 50, I want to be doing X, Y, Z. I went to college in the olden days. There were 180 majors. There's now over 1,800 majors, which is overwhelming. I think it's important to also look at a degree like accounting. There are many people with accounting degrees who are not accountants, but that foundation in the accounting world gives them a lot of places to jump off and pursue other things. So I think not only looking at it as the outcome, but looking at it as what does it provide for a foundation and where would it lead?
You know, one of the things that we hear a lot that's different from my era, and it's probably different from all previous eras, but you know, my grandparents, typically they get a job, and that's where they were for 50 years.
Yep.
When it became, I'm 56, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s. We would change careers once or twice. Now they're saying kids now could change careers 7 or 8 times.
Absolutely.
And so is there a reason for that? Do you know? Is it a change in our economy, or is it just maybe a different mentality among kids, or is there something that's changing in that, do you think?
Not to be coy, but I think the answer is yes and yes. I think it is the idea that our world has changed, our economy has changed, the workforce has changed, how we view work has changed.
Right.
But I think there's also a tremendous emphasis on my personal satisfaction within my job.
Right.
So when I went to college and I became an education major, and I became a teacher, I did not expect every year to be rosy, peachy, perfect. I knew that there would be some years that were bumpier than others, but that didn't make me kind of even contemplate really changing the area that I was in, where I feel like now we're dealing with a population that's very quick to kind of make drastic changes when things don't pan out the way we expect them to.
I'm going to say something that just popped into my mind. I was having a conversation yesterday with someone who told me about two people they knew who actually had committed suicide, who were not, I don't know their spiritual condition, but the reason was everything looked good on the surface, but they were not happy at their job.
Wow.
They didn't feel appreciated. And I thought, is that really where we get our identity? And I think for a lot of our world, and that's why you see people bouncing around, because their job is their entire identity.
Right.
And that's not my view as a Christian. Your identity is in Christ, faith and family come first. But it is important to have a job that you like, that you enjoy, and that is satisfying within the balance of, I think, bigger picture issues.
Right.
And so, do you see lights come on when you're testing kids or with parents? I know with us, suddenly we see something that our son or daughter is interested in, and it really kind of lights up their thing when they get this career test back.
Right. And that is one of the most wonderful aspects. I feel like sometimes we know ourselves to be like, I'm more of a creative person, or I'm more of an analytical person, but sometimes we haven't put specific labels with that. And I love it when the light bulb goes on and we're having a face-to-face conversation, and you mentioned something that it's kind of like the pieces click. And that is just a very satisfying aspect of what I do. I love watching that happen.
Yeah, you mentioned a job to them, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I could be this or this, and I never thought about this, and that just gets them. Tell us about some of the specific tests. We mentioned ASVAB. That was one I took because it was a military test back in the 80s, and I didn't realize it was being used until years later for non-military situations. I was considering the military. I took the ASVAB test, but apparently now a lot of homeschool families take that. Tell us about that, and maybe there's others too. I know that's not the one you work with.
Right. So I feel like that's a good starting point for a lot of families. It gives them some good basic information, but it was created by the military for their purposes. I really feel like interest testing is important. A lot of parents ask if I do personality testing, and I do not do that. I do interest testing. I use the Strongs, which has been around for a really long time. It's updated majorly every 10 years and minorly every 2 years. So I feel like it's kept very current with what our economy needs and specific roles within the economy. And I just love the different aspects that it brings to the surface. Interests, it brings a lot of preferences for working with people versus working more solitary, working toward kind of a corporate outcome, or are you more of an independent contributor? Leadership capabilities. I just feel like it brings out a lot of things. I've been very pleased with the assessment over the years, and the training that I received in doing that, I feel like is very complete. So I really enjoy using the Strongs.
So at what age would you recommend parents start considering testing their child?
I definitely don't think it should happen before high school. I really feel like sophomore year of high school is pretty ideal. That's usually when they take the PSAT for the first time, and all of a sudden people are starting to talk about what are you going to do after high school. So it becomes a little more of a reality. But parents know their children best. And so if you have a kid who's a sophomore in high school, but they're not really thinking about the future more than Saturday night, they're probably not ready for it. I'd say the vast majority of students I work with, junior year is a pretty key year. Senior year, we do a lot, but the problem is the kid feels like his back is against the wall and they're really scrambling. They're feeling a lot of pressure. But sophomore or junior year, there's time for college visits. There's time to do some job shadowing, time to kind of do some research and go, yeah, this does feel like me, versus feeling like we're kind of, need to get it all figured out real quickly.
What role do you think career testing plays with with our economy, in the sense that one of my criticisms of colleges, and I think they're starting to realize it, is they're degree factories.
Yes.
They will give a child a degree in archaeology, and there may only be 4 jobs for archaeology in all of Indianapolis, if that.
Right.
And here you spent $100,000 for a degree about archaeology, and there's no jobs for it.
Yes.
So what happens, if a child tests in a certain field, because and the parents as well, that's great, but can you be employed at that?
Right.
Is that part of what career testing can help parents decide?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that you just mentioned that's very important is there are a lot of careers that you need an advanced degree to even start in it. And I think having a very open discussion about how many years does the student anticipate being in college, how many years do the parents feel like is reasonable. If we have a job that you need to have a master's degree that's 7 years, that's a lot of years in school before I'm marketable.
Right.
So how can we look at that and make sure that both what the parents are expecting and when the student is expecting kind of line up? The other thing is a lot of our young people have a vision of an occupation based on what they've seen on TV or read in books that is not very accurate to what it is in the real world. So I do encourage parents and students to look at the Occupational Outlook. It is a book or a website that is written by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics.
Yes.
For every occupation in the world, you can find out the average income, the entry level of education needed, how fast the field is growing for the next decade. And those are important things to consider when you're looking at a career.
That's excellent. That is great advice. In fact, we had a state legislator who's trying to tie that requirement to colleges to let people know.
Yes.
Okay, you're getting a degree in this. Your school counselor should tell you this is a dying field or a growing field or that type of thing. How much? So we're kind of talking with the assumption that we're talking about going to college.
Right.
But obviously college is very expensive. Not all kids go to college. Is career testing helpful for kids who aren't going to college?
Absolutely. And I'm working with more and more people who are not maybe college bound, but I feel like everybody needs a skill or an area of expertise that they're taking forward. So that might be a trade, that might be a certification in an area or something like that. I am really sad. I wish we had more trade school options. We're really limited on that.
The trade companies are dying for kids.
Yeah.
They will teach welding and construction and things like that. And that was something we used to have years ago. We have less of, and we need it. And we need good kids who can do those types of jobs. And those jobs are paying a lot more than they used to.
Yes. Yeah. And, I feel like the career centers through our local high schools are really underutilized. And I think that is a great place to get experience in a lot of the trades, often in cosmetology, beginning healthcare type occupations, computer applications. That is a great place to see if that's an area you really enjoy. And again, I think that's really underutilized.
I know a lot of those offices on college campuses too. They will help students do resumes. They'll help them do mock interviews.
Yes.
My son had an interview for an internship, and we had to talk to him about how you dress, what you wear, which is funny because I think we over-prepped him because I think things have changed a little bit in the business world, where I was thinking, you gotta wear dress pants, dress shirt, and a tie. Well, it's not quite that way, but when you interview, you need to. And there's things like that kids need to be taught. So what are some of the other things you've learned in doing this that maybe you didn't expect when you started? Wow.
First of all, I meet just the greatest families, and it's fun to see how parents' visions and kids' visions can really come together. It's fun to see how life experiences have made a huge difference for different families. I just love it when the light bulb comes on and there's an area that they're excited about. I think it's also neat because I talk a lot about colleges and colleges you should consider, or trade school or programs, and I think it's fun to watch that piece come together. Genetics are always amazing. I love it if I have a mom and a dad who are an engineer and the student will say, I'll do anything but engineering, or mom and dad are both accountants and the kid's like, I'll do anything but accounting. So that part I think is always kind of fun and funny to watch develop. But yeah, it's a very exciting field. It's also fun to work with young people who are excited about what the future holds.
And those kids see more. You mentioned a career you see on TV. If you live with an engineer or fill in the blank, a doctor,
yes,
it's great. A doctor's great on TV, but if you live with one and you don't see Dad very often, or you see him always on call, you see more of a picture. Maybe you see some of the downsides, and every job has a downside.
Every job, yeah.
So your child may not want to do what you're doing because of the downside, but they need to realize it's all a trade-off.
It is. Yeah. It's all a trade-off. And every job has a fair amount of repetition. Uh-huh. Every job has a positive side and a negative side. And it's just figuring out how those work with your personality and what you are tolerating and what you are excited about and how they come together.
Now, if my wife watches this, she's going to shoot me because I'm going to ask a personal question. So with our son, he's in the stage. He's in college. He's trying to figure out what to do, and repeatedly he has had friends say, "Oh, I think you'd be a great one of these." Mm-hmm. And there's a theme in this. He's got several kids who are telling him, "I think you'd be really good at this." That didn't really quite show up on the career testing we did, and so my wife and I are talking about, can we see him doing this? His friends see him doing this. I think we could see him doing this. How much of that is I guess legit when people see things in you that maybe you don't see or someone else, but they see a character trait or a quality. Is that something that plays into decisions?
I think it would be important in a situation like that with your son to really encourage him to speak to people who've seen something in him and said, you'd be a great doctor. To really ask very honestly, so what do you see in me that you see that you feel like would lead to me being a great physician? The other thing that I really can't stress enough is I encourage my clients to do a lot of job shadowing, or even if they can't job shadow, to have someone in that field over for dinner and talk to them about why they like what they do. What don't they like about what they do? If they were young and going into this field, would they still pursue this field? Right. What are some options of things I can do within this field? To really talk to people. I also find it a lot that somebody will say to a young person, oh, you should go to this college. Pick a college, any college. Why should I go there? Because it's the best school in the world. Well, we need a little more specifics. And I think the same thing would be true of careers. If you see me in a field, what is it about me that you see really excelling in that field or being a good advocate for that field?
Well, I think a lot of kids today also, they want to go into a career where they feel like they're making a difference.
Absolutely.
There's much more of a mission mindset or a change the world mindset, and there are some jobs where it's about doing your job, making your money, providing for your family, and that is your mission field. Yes. It's not necessary. We can't all be pastors or life changers. We're all supposed to be a light in our position. We're all supposed to follow Christ and show Christ, but we're not all. I tell my son and I were talking about, he was considering going into ministry, and he's getting a degree in business first. I said, Ben, American Family Association would not exist if it were not for Christian businessmen who can help fund us, or people who are doing well in the business world, regardless of what that is, and they donate, and that carries out a mission. So the Lord needs successful businessmen as much as He needs pastors and people in full-time ministry.
You just hit something I'm very passionate about. So my worldview training is something that I love and I love to pass on. And I do not believe in what's called a sacred secular split. And what I mean by that is you can be a pastor who serves the Lord, but you can also be an accountant who serves the Lord, a welder who serves the Lord, a nurse who serves the Lord. That our value is definitely related to how we're serving, but it is not in our role within that. And I think the other thing that we need to teach our young people is working at a soup kitchen and passing out the soup is important, but also preparing the soup, cleaning the area, providing the ingredients. Those are also life-changing things. Maybe they're not as front and center, but they're all a part of that process.
When you can think of famous businessmen, be it the founders of Chick-fil-A or
Yes.
who have used a secular job, if you will, a restaurant business, and with that prosperity have impacted ministries. And you think Hobby Lobby.
Yes.
The Bible Museum in Washington, D.C., which is phenomenal, would not be there if they were not successful at Hobby Lobby.
Yes.
And so being successful in business in a quote-unquote secular avenue can have all sorts of non-secular benefits or Christian benefits. Of course, wherever we were placed, we're supposed to be ambassadors for Christ, and our workforce is our marketplace. But anyway, so I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you had some really good points here that I had not thought of. Is there anything else you'd like people to know as they're considering their kids doing college testing or career testing?
I just think it really gives us some insight into who our kids are, and sometimes it just gives us words to identify something that we already knew. Yeah. I also think it's very beneficial that someone who doesn't really know that kid can be saying positive things that they see that came to the surface. Mm-hmm. All of our children and young people need to be encouraged, yes, need to be built up. And I think any way we can do that can be a very positive thing.
Well, tell our audience again about your company and the name of it and how to learn more about it.
So my company is Successful Transitions, and I have a website that's recently been redone, which is www.stransitions.com. And I'm located in Indianapolis, okay, but I work with people all over the United States, okay, and even a few foreign countries.
Oh, wow. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it. I've learned a lot about this, and it's been a great time. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy.
Well, thank you for watching today, and I hope you have a great weekend. I'm Micah Clark with American Family Association of Indiana, and thank you for watching.